What's up, droners, and welcome again to Australia. As you can see, I'm here in Sydney near the Opera House, and I was going to talk to you guys about the experience that I had flying here, because one of the reasons I came to Australia was because I'm a drone pilot and that's what I get paid to do. It's pretty cool. So I want to talk to you guys about flying in tight spaces. The story starts where I was hired, or contracted, however you want to look at it, to come out here and fly with a company called Trees Adventures. Trees Adventures is, as you can see, a super dope, like, I guess I'd call it an adventurous ropes course, where you go through an experience like, I don't know, it's like an obstacle ropes course. So yeah, that's a wrap for today. Ropes course, flying a drone through the most thing that I've ever flown through in my entire life. Like, literally nothing but trees and cables and trees and cables and trees and ropes. But the reason I'm having a hard time describing it is because we don't really have something like this that I've ever been to in the States. And I didn't really know exactly what I was getting into, because you can see pictures of something, but that doesn't really do it justice until you're standing there. So we arrive here and it's just trees and ropes and nets and cables and wires everywhere. And I thought this would be a good drone or dialogue episode, because it's really learning how to fly when there's more obstacles than you'd ever really want to fly around, but you have to do it because that's what you're there to do. So first things first, what you're gonna do is obviously you're gonna have to scout the location. Walk around and see what your shots are gonna be like you always do. Make sure that you know exactly where you're gonna be flying. Make sure you're not gonna be flying over any people. And do the safety inspection things. Like, hey, okay, I'm gonna be flying here, can't have anybody there. I had people who were helping me out, like a spotter that was helping me to make sure that when I was flying in tight spaces or places where people were going to be, that they would keep them away or keep them from being under the drone. But the big thing for me is actually like angles. So when I'm flying, like, typically what I'll do when I'm scouting is look for, I guess, holes that I can fly through. Because typically in these kind of situations, there's not, like, you can't just do what you would normally do, is like stare down at the screen and just focus nothing on the shot. Like, just like, oh look, I'm gonna just get the shot and get, fly around and do all my things. That doesn't work so well. Even though I was flying with two different drones that are very good for these kind of things, which I would recommend, is the Phantom 4 Professional and the Mavic. The reason why these two drones are good for that is obviously the Phantom 4 Professional has pretty much a 360 sphere around it when it comes to the object avoidance sensors, which can be a good and bad thing, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then the Mavic, because it's so small and it has a forward-facing sensors. So both good drones for this. But first, you go scout, you see the holes, look for the places that you're specifically gonna be flying, and you go say, okay, cool, I'm gonna fly through this hole, I'm gonna fly through that hole. You just pretty much are looking to be able to find the angles that you want and make sure you have the shot. So I find them, identify the different angles, I identify the different areas I'm gonna be flying, and I'm like, all right, cool, here we go. And you pretty much, what I always do is do like a practice flight first without looking at all at the screen or the monitor, is like just literally just stare at the drone and like, nervous your way through it, and see how you feel about it. See how much you had to elevate, see if you had to pan, you have to tilt, see what do you have to do to be able to keep the angles at what you're doing and make it work. So I do the practice shot, so I record the practice flight, and then I go through and actually do the shot. And in this instance, it was kind of like timing involved, because a lot of people needed to be on the course and walking through the shots. So I had to actually have help from the people there and then say, okay, cool, can you guys go now? And then they'll go, and then I'll go through it. Now, a couple issues that I had with doing this, which I was referring to earlier, is with the Phantom 4, Phantom 4 Pro. It has a lot of sensors all the way around it. That's a problem, because if you need to get really close to something, it's gonna stop you. It's not gonna let you do that. And when you're taking off and landing, especially when you're doing it in tight spaces, the sensors aren't really gonna let you do it, especially when it comes to landing. So what I recommend is that you actually turn off your object avoidance sensors when you're taking off and when you're landing. It just makes it way easier to be able to do that, especially landing, because like I literally couldn't land in a couple places because I forgot to turn my sensors off. You're just sitting there, it's just like, it'll just stop and it won't go anywhere. So make sure you turn off your sensors, make sure you know your spots, make sure you know the angles that you're gonna fly through, make sure you're coordinating and communicating with everybody around you. And honestly, like I said, after you see your holes, then I always make sure I stand in a place where I can see the entire flight path of where the drone's gonna go. There's very specific places you have to be able to see the entire angle and say, okay, cool, I'm gonna go up through this hole right here, then I'm gonna be over here on this corner of the hole so I can see everything that's gonna be my path. Especially when you have like nearly invisible wires and things like that that are hard to see when you're trying to pay attention to the screen as well as the drone, as well as keeping everybody safe. Same time, it's not easy. So find your angle, fly through it, do the practice shots, you should be good. Now, the reason I would use the Phantom 4 and the Mavic is, well, just mostly because of size. Like with the Phantom 4, great drone, great camera, object avoidance sensors are super helpful, but it's a little bit intimidating when you have a hole that's just barely bigger than the Phantom 4, and you could possibly use something like the Mavic. And I like the Mavic more because when you put it into the tap, when you use the mode, oh, I should tell you about that. One other thing that I do is that when I'm flying in tight spaces, especially if I don't need to move fast, which normally you don't need to move fast in tight spaces, is I actually go into the flight modes and then put it into tripod mode. Tripod mode slows the drone down in all inputs. It makes it so it turns, it goes, it does everything slower. Really slow. And for the Phantom 4, I think it brings everything down to around 4 miles an hour. And for the Mavic, it brings it down to like 2. And that's why I really like the Mavic, is because the Mavic actually moves super slow in tripod mode, and it's also smaller, so I can get it through tighter spaces. I can feel more comfortable when I'm flying it, and the object avoidance sensors aren't on all the sides, so that I can get closer to things on the side without it either beeping at me or stopping itself. So those are my big suggestions. To review, make sure you look at your stuff, go through, scout, make sure you know your angles and stand in those angles, make sure you know where everybody is. Make sure that you are aware of what your sensors are doing, whether you're gonna have them on or off. I recommend you have them off for landing, especially if you're landing in a tight area. And then also use the tripod mode when you're flying. So that's what I think, that's what worked for me. I got some really amazing shots. As I will show you guys at the end of this shot, you'll see some really cool shots of me flying through some really tight spaces. But other than that, man, you guys have fun. That's another big thing. Make sure it's fun and enjoy it. Droners, thank you for checking out this down under version of Droner Dialogue. And if you want to see more, we got them. They're right here. Or if you would like to see the dopest opening video ever to a drone channel, we got it. Check it out. As always, please, please, please make sure you check out our Patreon page. That's what allows me to be able to keep doing this and hitting that subscribe button, because we wouldn't be here if you guys weren't here with us. And as always, make sure to stay fly. Cool. I should have said mate. Stay fly, mate. Ah, ha ha.